Welcome to your online training module, Introduction to Medical Entomology. In this unit, we'll take a closer look at diseases of medical importance across Mexico, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Together, we'll explore how vector-borne diseases have shaped the region's history and continue to influence public health today. Throughout this course, we will look at the nation of Vectorlandia and how their local Ministry of Health may start to recognize an outbreak in their country and which surveillance steps to take to contain the outbreak.
Vectorlandia, a small tropical nation with a history of vector-borne diseases, is now facing a new public health threat. A recent spike in severe fever cases has led to the country's first suspected vector-borne fatality. In response, the Ministry of Health is urgently investigating the case to determine if a vector-borne infection is to blame. This could lead to a major overhaul of Vectorlandia's disease surveillance and response strategies.
Across Mexico, Latin America, and in the Caribbean, public health systems are under constant strain from infectious diseases transmitted by vectors, some endemic, others imported. From long-standing threats like malaria and Chagas disease to the more recent like Zika and chikungunya, the region faces a unique combination of biological, ecological, and social challenges. Today, we'll explore some of the most medically significant diseases affecting this region. Vector-borne diseases are illnesses associated with a pathogen, either a virus, bacteria, or parasite that is transmitted by a vector to humans or to animals. Some common vectors in the region are mosquitoes, ticks, sandflies, and triatomine bugs. Now, let's take a look at vector-borne diseases transmitted by ticks. These are called tick-borne diseases. Ticks are small blood-feeding arachnids that latch onto the host's skin. Once they have fed, they fall off and molt until they become adults, at which point they can lay eggs. In the larval stage, they have only 3 pairs of legs. A 4th pair develops during the nymph stage. Nymphs are key transmitters of diseases, as they have fed on blood as larval ticks and may now be carriers. Nymphs are also smaller than adult ticks, allowing them to go unnoticed and remain attached for a prolonged period. Ticks are known transmitters of Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Lyme disease, and anaplasmosis. Tick-borne diseases are often underdiagnosed due to nonspecific symptoms which include fever, rash, and muscle pain. However, when untreated, can lead to severe symptoms. The Rocky Mountain spotted fever infection is most serious of the group, which can lead to organ failure and death. Now, let's take a look at vector-borne diseases transmitted by triatomine bugs, also known as kissing bugs. These blood-feeding insects are vectors for Chagas disease caused by the Trypanosoma cruzi. Often considered a silent killer since symptoms within the acute phase of the infection are often mild or non-existing. However, when mild symptoms do occur, they can include fever or swelling of the eyes, also known as Romagn's sign. This occurs when the parasite gets into the eyelid or into a bug bite near the eye. Within the chronic phase of the infection, it causes heart disease, digestive issues, and neurological problems. Chagas disease is endemic in Latin America, but due to migration and tourism, the disease has been reported in America, Europe, and Asia. In Latin America, the vector has shown resilience by adapting to changes in their environment and making their way into urban areas and housing. Although considered a neglected disease, there has been a decline in cases in the region. Next on our list of vectors are biting midges, or Culicoides pariensis. Biting midges are small but mighty vectors and are often called no-see-ums because of their size. Despite its size, they are known to transmit Oropouche virus. Its symptoms include fever, headaches, myalgia, and nausea. Myalgia is a medical term for pain in one or more muscles. Long-term myalgia can cause severe long-term physical or mental complications. First identified in Trinidad and Tobago, Oropouche is primarily found in South and Central America, specifically the region near Brazil, Peru, Panama, and Trinidad and Tobago. It is the most common arboviral illness in parts of the Brazilian Amazon, second only to dengue. There haven't been any reported cases of Oropouche being transmitted between humans, nor are there any vaccines available. Next on our list is the phlebotomine sandfly. In Latin America and the Caribbean, these fuzzy insects transmit leishmaniasis. Leishmaniasis is a neglected tropical disease caused by Leishmania parasite through the bite of an infected female sandfly. Most cases of leishmaniasis are traced back to incursions into forested area, and most common among foresters, military personnel, and foragers. In Latin America and the Caribbean, the primary vector species are within the Lutzomyia genus. Depending on the leishmaniasis infection, it can manifest itself as sores on a person's body or mucosal lining of the person, such as nose and mouth. These are considered New World cutaneous and New World mucocutaneous infections. The third type of infection is the visceral infection. This infection affects internal organs and can be fatal if left untreated. A major challenge that researchers face when studying sandflies is to properly identifying the sandfly to the genus level due primarily to their size. It is not impossible, but rather tedious. However, some of the important species include Lutzomyia longipalpus, Lutzomyia olmica, and Lutzomyia whitmani. Finally, the deadliest insect of all, the mosquito. Depending on the species, they can transmit deadly diseases such as malaria or dengue. Both infect millions of people annually and, according to WHO, responsible for over 500,000 deaths annually. Mosquitoes belong to the Culicidae family, where the primary vectors are the Aedes and Anopheles species. Together, they transmit the deadliest diseases, malaria and dengue. Other diseases they transmit include Zika, chikungunya, yellow fever, Mayaro, and West Nile virus. All have been reported within the region. Aedes mosquitoes are capable of transmitting multiple vector-borne diseases. These include Venezuelan equine encephalitis, which can result in neurological complications. The nonspecific symptoms include chills, headaches, myalgia, and nausea. It can also cause arthralgia. This is the medical term for pain in the joints. It can also cause serious neurological disease symptoms such as coma, convulsions, and seizures. Then there is Zika. This disease is primarily known for causing microcephaly. During the outbreak in the Americas, pregnant women were considered high risk as the disease could affect their child's development in the womb. In adults, the risk was developing Guillain-Barré syndrome, a neurological condition where the immune system attacks healthy nerves and could lead to paralysis. Chikungunya symptoms include nonspecific symptoms such as headaches, fever, and muscle pain. However, patients would often suffer long-term effects of arthralgia, making mobility difficult. In addition, Aedes mosquitoes also spread dengue, the world's second deadliest mosquito-borne disease. While its mortality rate is lower than that of malaria, dengue spreads easily, especially in urban areas. If not treated properly, it can progress to severe dengue, also known as dengue hemorrhagic fever, which can be fatal. In the 1700s, the first dengue-like outbreak occurred in the Caribbean, with multiple outbreaks reported in the region occurring after. Since the 2000s, there have been record-breaking reported cases of dengue throughout the region. This can be attributed to the Aedes vector survivability in urban communities, which can infect many persons within these densely populated areas. According to the Pan American Health Organization, dengue infections go unreported, so the true burden of this disease may not be fully recognized. This can be troubling, since climate change can affect environmental conditions and weather systems such as El Niño and La Niña, can affect the transmission of dengue and proliferation of the Aedes mosquito. Mayaro can be transmitted by both Aedes mosquitoes and the Haemococcus mosquito. Aedes mosquitoes are responsible for urban transmission of the disease, while the Haemococcus mosquito is responsible for sylvatic transmission of Mayaro. Sylvatic transmission refers to the disease life cycle within a forested or woodland areas. The overlapping symptoms between Mayaro and dengue include fever, rash, arthralgia, and myalgia. Also, both infections share similar geographic region. Although the Haemococcus mosquitoes are the primary vector for Mayaro, Aedes mosquitoes have been shown to be vectors for Mayarovirus, so physicians might be quick to diagnose as dengue based on symptoms alone. The deadliest of all vector-borne diseases is spread by the Anopheles mosquito. Malaria is responsible for 500,000 deaths annually. Malaria is a life-threatening disease caused by the Plasmodium parasite. In the region, Plasmodium vivax and Plasmodium falciparum are the main causative agents for malaria. Plasmodium vivax is considered to be endemic in the region, while Plasmodium falciparum is considered to be introduced during the 1500s through the transatlantic slave trade. There has also been several outbreaks in the region, mostly through to migration due to employment or political instability. Some malaria symptoms include fever, chills, headache, and an enlarged spleen, where severe cases lead to respiratory distress and even death. In the region, malaria cases are mostly reported along the Amazon region. However, it is still considered endemic to 18 Latin American countries. Through integrated vector control strategies and interventions, some countries are considered malaria-free and certified by the World Health Organization. Those countries include Paraguay, El Salvador, and Belize. While climate change remains one of the primary drivers influencing the spread and persistence of vector-borne diseases in the region, additional factors also contribute to disease emergence and transmission. Deforestation disrupts natural ecosystems, bringing sylvatic vector species and their associated pathogens into closer contact with human populations, increasing the risk of outbreaks. The movement of people across regions can introduce pathogens into susceptible populations where competent vectors are already established, facilitating local transmission. Similarly, international trade and transport can serve as pathways for vector introduction, with insects such as mosquitoes or ticks inadvertently transported into new areas. Now, let's hear from Dr. Amy Morrison, who will highlight what she believes is a key vector-borne disease of medical importance currently affecting Mexico and Latin America.
So I am a trained epidemiologist. I have my both MSPH and PhD from Schools of Public Health, UCLA, and my PhD from Yale. And I started out as a pre-med actually, but discovered public health. The biggest thing that I've observed is the spread of the disease from essentially urban areas to more rural areas. This is in contrast to Asia, where it's everywhere. But here in Peru, when I arrived, there was no transmission in rural sites. And now many of these smaller river-based communities have dengue. One thing we know is that Aedes aegypti actually travels on riverboats. The cargo holds get flooded and produce Aedes aegypti sometimes. So it's really an issue of transport that brings the mosquito to new areas. And then some locations are more receptive than others, but we're seeing a huge explosion based on urbanization and then also transport to less rural areas. So I'm going to say myaravirus. It's a virus closely related to chikungunya virus. It's an alpha virus, but its known cycle is between non-human primates and Haemogogus mosquitoes, which are canopy mosquitoes. We don't know if there are other bridge vectors in communities that could also transmit it to humans. We see cases here in Iquitos at low levels, usually people who have some sort of forest exposure, they go to a recreation area or something on the weekend. It causes a disease similar to chikungunya. It causes arthralgia, which means like these, bone and long-term sequelae. So people can be in pain for quite a while. We also know that the virus can be transmitted in the laboratory by Aedes aegypti, which is very abundant in large urban areas, but at very high titers. So it's not an ideal vector, but if you have a small adaptation or mutation, either in the mosquito or in the virus that increases the vector competence of Aedes aegypti, it would cause a massive outbreak in a large urban center like Iquitos.